Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It is time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm your host, Lena Nazari. You can go to Instagram, The Beautiful Dead Podcast. That's where I'm probably the most active right now. I am also on TikTok. You can also email me. That's lena@lenanazari.com. And if you go to my website and click on appearances, you can see where I'm going to be. The only thing I have locked in right now for the near future is October 25th at Vampa. I will be doing a special event, so make sure that you're following me on Instagram to see the details as they come together and what I'll be talking about and all that good stuff. I'm going to jump right in because I know you guys are excited. This is a continuation from last week, so if you missed last week, go back because we are now talking about a sequel. So we will be doing the Subspecies, the whole universe on this channel. So we did Subspecies 1, now we're doing 2, then 3, then you'll see Vampire Journals with me and Tony from Hack the Movies because continuity-wise, that's how it falls. Then Subspecies 4, then 5, and then yes, I reached out to Tony and we are gonna quickly talk about the other 2 in the vampire universe of Full Moon, which is Decadent Evil 1 and 2. So that will happen after Subspecies 5. So we are gonna do the whole Full Moon vampire universe for you guys. Very excited. It's gonna be a lot of fun, but I'm gonna warn you ahead of time. Decadent Evil 1 and 2, yikes, yikes. And if I didn't tell you already, these are all available on Tubi and Prime. So you can watch them if you'd like to. Somebody reached out to me and asked what was playing on the TV, my little tiny TV behind me. Last week it was Subspecies and today it's Subspecies 2. So isn't that cool? It's like this tiny little TV that my kid found at Goodwill and gave to me. So that's pretty exciting. All right, guys, we're gonna jump right in. There's actually a thunderstorm headed our way. So if we're lucky, we're gonna get a little thunderstorm in the background. Very exciting. And listen, I'm a little bit shaky. I don't know if you can tell, but that's because I just got back from the gym and I punished myself in the gym. I didn't expect it to be that hard, but I'm feeling it. So a little bit shaky. It also might be the coffee that I've been sipping on. I have coffee here in my New Orleans coffee mug. All right, guys, Subspecies 2, Bloodstone. Let's do it. We open with a recap of the first movie as the camera pans over the remnants of the final fight from the first one. The the Subspecies, pull the stake out of Radu's chest, tendrils shoot out of his neck, they look like tendons, and pull his head back onto his body. He sits up and finds the coffin that Stefan and Michelle were in at the end of the first one, but in this one they're in separate coffins, so a little bit of a continuity error here. When he lifts the lid, it's just Stefan. Radu stakes him and Stefan disintegrates. So we know in this world, if you stake a vampire, I guess not Radu though, because he didn't disintegrate, but I guess if you stake this type of vampire, they turn into just dust and there's nothing but a skeleton left over. Radu turns to a second coffin, which where the heck did that come from? Again, massive continuity error, and I will be pointing out all of these continuity errors as we talk about these movies. If you didn't already watch the Hack the Movies one, where I also talked about continuity errors. Michelle is in the second coffin. He raises a stake to kill her, but the sun rises and he runs to his tomb to sleep. When the sun sets, he rises, but so does Michelle. So that tells us in some universes, the older vampires rise early because they need less sleep. But I guess in this universe, they all rise kind of simultaneously. Michelle sees that Stefan is dead, grabs the bloodstone, and hides. Radu comes in, sees the bloodstone is missing and Michelle is gone, and he's so pissed off that he grabs his brother's skeleton and like strangles it and shakes it and then like stomps it to dust, which is...
Bloodstone! You bastard! The bloodstone! You bastard! You will suffer dearly for this.
I'm gonna now call Radu's temper tantrum, but that's exactly what it looks like. It's a great acting moment. Meanwhile, Michelle has fled. She returns to the fort to get her stuff, changing into actual clothes, and we see that she is losing her reflection. The bite mark is still there too, so I guess rapid healing is not one of her vampire strengths. That also tells me that they don't turn automatically, that it takes a few days, which I've seen in other vampire worlds. Oh, I forgot to mention that they completely recasted Michelle, and we're just, I guess, not supposed to notice. And recasting happens, and that's fine, but she went from very short hair to very long curly hair overnight. Okay, fine, whatever, all right. She boards a train, and we have a cool shot of Radu's shadow on the train as it speeds away. Then she arrives to the city, which is Bucharest, and it's not long before she sees his shadow and knows that he's nearby. So she goes to a hotel and asks to make an international call, calling someone named Becky and saying that she wants to come home. She begs the girl on the phone to come to Hotel Bucharest to get her. Becky agrees and tells Michelle, "Stay put until I get there."
Becky?
Michelle, are you back already?
I want to come home.
Michelle, what's wrong?
I don't want to be like him, Becky.
Be like who?
He bit me.
So she gets a room and plans to hold up inside. She looks out the window to see Radu is watching her, but the dawn is coming, so he flees. And then we get an unnecessary shower scene of her completely nude, full frontal, crying in the shower. Full moon. We should do a game. Like, how long does it take for each movie to show boobs or full nudity? I'll have to look, and then by the end of this, I'll have like a nice little chart for you. Radu is in a cemetery, and he enters a mausoleum, descending down the stairs into an underground room. And we see this female creature who kind of looks like the crypt keeper if the crypt keeper were female, and we learn that this is Radu's mother, the evil sorceress that we heard about in the first movie.
Mommy.
From now on, I'll be referring to her as Circe because that is actually her name. So we meet Circe. She tells him to leave, but he gives her the dagger that killed his father and still has blood on it, and she licks it up just like Radu did in the first one, so we know where he got it.
I bring you a sacred gift. The blood of my father.
He says he's killed his father and the other son, and she's pretty excited, but then she asks for the bloodstone.
The bloodstone. Give it to me. The bloodstone was stolen from me by Stefan's consort.
He admits that Stefan's consort has stolen it, and she says, "Kill her and bring me the stone." He says, "I'll bring you the stone, but I can't kill her. I mingled my blood with hers and will have her as my plaything." So, vampire pause. We talked about in the first one how it wasn't very clear how the turning happens or the embrace itself, but he said, "I mingled my blood with hers." So it wasn't shown. We just saw Radu biting her and then Stefan biting her, but we know from that statement that you do have to mingle your blood with the human, and then that's what eventually turns them. This is the important stuff we look for on this podcast. She bites a chunk of flesh from his arm and then spits it into a goblet. Then she tells him, go to your father's castle, burn all the dead ones in a fire of blackthorn, cast their ashes to the north wind. Remain until the moon is full, and there will be there will be horror. And he's like, but mommy, he calls her mommy, the sun is coming. I will stay here for the day. And she's like, that is forbidden. Go now. And he does. He listens to his mother.
But mommy, the sun draws nigh. I will lie here and leave at sunset.
No, it is forbidden. Go this instant.
So it's daylight and Michelle's in the bed, but the curtains are letting some sun in. So she wakes up and crawls into the bathroom and then falls asleep in the tub. The maid comes in to clean the room and finds what she thinks is a corpse. So we know that these vampires don't have a heartbeat or breathing. So she thinks there's a corpse in the bathtub and she calls the police. And this is when we meet Inspector Marin. He comes in, takes pictures, and sees the bite marks on her throat. They put her into a body bag and take Michelle to the morgue. He goes through her book bag and finds the bloodstone. While she's being transported, she wakes up, scaring the shit out of the drivers who wreck the van. So she runs and is wandering in the streets until she finds a theater, sneaking in just as they're locking up for the night. So she goes downstairs into the basement of this theater, and it's like the costume and props room, and they have a glass coffin. So she climbs into it, which, guys, vampires, P.S., if you're hiding, don't hide in a glass coffin. Because if someone came down to the props room during the day and they just see the coffin that's always there, no big deal. But it's a glass coffin, they're going to see you, and you are helpless while you're sleeping. That's another thing we know about the vampires in this world. When they're down for the day. They don't wake up, because she was transported in a body bag and didn't wake up. Okay. Meanwhile, Radu is doing what he was told and is burning all the bodies. So listen to his mother. Good for you. It's daytime. We see a flight arrive, and Becky arrives in Bucharest. She goes to the hotel only to be told. She's like, I'm here to see this person. And they're like, go sit down, please. The hotel calls Inspector Marin and then a guy named Mel, who is from the U.S. Embassy. And they question Becky, who we find out is Michelle's sister. They tell her that Michelle was thought to be dead, but was only unconscious and is now missing. They give her the book bag and the bloodstone.
One thing more. Do you know what is this?
To which, and then they're asking her, like, do you know what this is? Like, it looks very old, it looks very expensive. And she's like, are you implying that my sister stole it? And he's like, no, but before you guys leave Romania, we would like to see the receipt for this item. They tell her that they are looking for Michelle, but if Becky finds her first, please call them. Michelle awakens in the prop room and puts on one of the costume dresses from the theater, which, by the way, she looks awesome. Michelle has the best outfits in 2 and 3, like the best outfits. So she calls the hotel and asks if Becky is checked in. So then she calls Becky's room, but Becky is in the shower. So Michelle has hung up before Becky answers the phone. Michelle gets a set of keys to the theater and then goes out for the night while Becky puts on a cross necklace. We see Michelle now has super hearing. She can hear thoughts, and her vision starts to be bathed in red. And I think the implication is that's the bloodlust kicking in. She sees a cute guy, follows him into a metal club. She starts making out with this guy, but she kind of fangs out, so she freaks out and then runs back to the theater basement and into her glass coffin. Becky and Mel are working together to find Michelle. They start talking to a professor who knows Mara from the first one and asks why the 3 girls were there. So he explains that Mara and her 2 friends were studying the vampires of Prejmir. She shows him the bloodstone, but he doesn't really know what it is. And he does show them on the map where Fort Prejmir is, so that they can go try to find Michelle. And he says, I'll take you because I'm friends with Carl. And Carl was the caretaker of the fort from the first one. They arrive at the fort, and the professor calls out for Carl, but nobody comes out. They walk to the Castle Vladislav to see if they're out there doing their work. And he tells Becky and Mel that no one is left inside, which we know is wrong. And while on the property, they see a freshly dug up grave, and we know that's the one that Lillian climbed out of. He tells them he knows a secret way into the castle, and so they all go. He leads them into the castle through this like back tunnel and leads them into the throne room. And they're calling out for Michelle when Radu is above them, kind of not completely seen. And he's like, "What are you doing in my house? Get out." And so they like rush out because they didn't think anyone was in there. And Radu watches them take off in the car from the window. So now it's the full moon. So according to his mother, he can now return to Bucharest. Mel and Becky drop off the professor, and he tells them, "Come back in the morning and we'll find a book about the castle." Mel drops off Becky at the hotel, and we see that some sparks are starting to fly between the two of them, so we see where this is headed. Michelle is watching her sister from afar, but she's too afraid to approach. Becky sees her and chases her down the street as Radu watches. So Michelle finally stops and tells Becky, "Don't get too close." And then she says, "You can't help. I shouldn't have called you." She won't tell Becky what's going on, so Becky pulls out the bloodstone, which Michelle grabs from her, and Radu is watching. And she says, "Tell Mom I'm sorry." And then she sees Radu and she runs. Becky goes back to the hotel, and Michelle's in the theater basement with the bloodstone, so she tilts it back and lets a drop fall on her tongue. But Radu enters, and he sort of peruses the costumes, which is a great acting choice, and picks out a coat that he likes. And then he says, "You're my fledgling. Embrace me as your master, and all that I have will be yours. Spurn me, and I will torment you into eternity." And then she reminds him, "You killed all of my friends." And he says, "Soon enough, you will beg me. We have all the time in the world." And then he takes the bloodstone and he shadow flies away. It's not like the best way to try and woo a lady. It's a kind of a really strong approach, but you know, Radu, he has his own style. So he takes the bloodstone to his mother. Let's wait for the dog to stop barking. I can almost guarantee it's nothing important.
One eternity later.
He takes the bloodstone to his mother, who is very pleased. And she asks him why are you troubled? And he says, "I hunger for love." Okay. And she's like, "Well, love is for mortals." And he thinks Michelle doesn't like him because Stefan polluted her blood. Maybe it's you, bro. But he's like, "Oh, it's because Stefan polluted her blood." Becky is with Mel and Inspector Marin, and she describes what happened with Michelle, and they think that she's like mixed up in a stolen goods situation. They went back to the professor, and they're looking at the book about Castle Vladislav. So they're looking for it in this room full of books. They find it, and it tells them about King Vladislav and the bloodstone, which drips the blood of saints. Marin is like, "Oh, this is just a story." But then they see the etching of the bloodstone in the book, and they realize that is what Michelle has. The book talks about Stefan and Radu, and Becky tells them that's the name. Radu is the name that she called out before she ran.
This story tells of the rivalry between King Vlad's sons, Stefan and Radu.
Radu. She called that name last night, as if he were standing there watching us.
So now Michelle is awake, and in the streets, she's hunting. She returns to that metal club. Meanwhile, the cops drop Becky off at the hotel, and Radu is watching. Yikes. Michelle leads the cute guy from the other night out into the streets and back to the prop room in the theater. They start to make out and undress, but she vamps out and she bites him. And it's her first kill, so it's not so great. It's kind of messy. And then she starts to freak out and she pukes up all the blood, which like, oh, what a waste. Becky's asleep and Radu is outside her window. He phases out and then back into her room. So that's a power now. It's not the shadow flying. He like phases out and then shows up in her room. So it's like teleportation. He pulls up her nightgown and prepares to bite her femoral when the phone rings, waking up Becky, so he disappears. On the phone is Michelle, who tells Becky that she is in the park behind the theater, so Becky goes to her. Michelle's covered in blood and tells Becky, "I killed someone, And then she starts reacting to the rising sun. Radu approaches and shows up behind Michelle, and he says, "Accept me." And then both the vampires turn into shadow and disappear. He has taken her to his mom's crypt. Sorry. Yeah, that's right. I just had to double check. He has taken Michelle back to his mom's crypt and pulls her into the room to sleep next to him for the day. Becky told Mel and the professor what happened, and the professor believes her and says, so Radu is here and your sister is his disciple. So he's fully bought in on vampires. But Mel doesn't believe her. She tells him that the man that took Michelle was the man from the castle, and he looks like a ghoul, which is a great way to describe Radu. The professor spent the night reading the Vladislav book and has an idea of where Radu may be. The book talks about Radu's mother, where she was entombed alive. He thinks Radu is there, which he's right. He grabs a couple of stakes and an axe and says, let's go see if we can save your sister. Mel is trying to talk sense into Becky, and she's like, no, I've seen too much. I know this is real. So now she's bought in. So they all leave together. Mel storms out. The professor and Becky leave. Now they go to the mausoleum, and they break in, and they descend to find Radu and Michelle asleep. The professor raises the stake to kill Radu, but that's when Circe shows up and stabs him. The witch grabs Becky, and the camera pans out into the cemetery where we hear Becky screaming. That night, Michelle awakens to see Radu is gone and follows screams to see Becky held down by Radu and his mother. He teaches Michelle about the femoral and tells her, drink from your sister with me. Michelle grabs the dagger that he gave to his mother and stabs it into Radu's cheek. Circe attacks her, so she grabs a torch and sets Circe on fire. Radu seems pleased that Michelle is so feisty. He's like kind of into it. And he turns to Shadow, but she stabs the dagger into his shadow hand and stops him from flying. So he solidifies, and then she stabs him over and over and over, and the last one is into the brain, and then he drops. So that was an interesting little piece. Like, if you can catch the shadow of the vampire, they have to reform. So that's interesting. She sets Becky free, and she uses a spear to stake Radu in the heart. They run to the top of the stairs to leave the mausoleum or the crypt or whatever, but the sun is coming up. So Michelle's like, I can't. So Becky says, I will wait until dark, as Michelle walks backwards down the stairs and into the tunnels, only to be grabbed by Circe and pulled back screaming. And that's credits. Never forget the first time I watched this, and like, what a cliffhanger. So it was such a great way to end the movie, and the I think Circe like really steals movies 2 and 3, and Tony and I talked about this too, and like, I'm pretty sure he said when he was young that she really scared the shit out of him. She is such a good character. The makeup is unreal, and the actress is so good, and the whole dynamic between her and Radu and the way that she hates Michelle, which you'll see in the next one, is so well acted. It's so well done. It adds so much to the movie. I think we said in when I was talking to Tony about it that like we would watch a whole 10 movies just about those two, because it's so, the chemistry between them, the back and forth, the writing is so good. So we didn't learn too much new about the vampires in this one. We kind of learned that the turn takes a while. We did learn for sure that it's an embrace, a classic embrace to turn the vampires. Like I said in the first one, Radu is a very original vampire because he's part vampire, part witch. So that's why he looks the way he does. But we'll talk about that more in the fifth one. We learned just a little bit about like Michelle and her sister, but not too much new about the vampires themselves. Now, I don't know if the vision turning red is supposed to be taken literal, like the vampire's vision actually turns red. I think it's more just for the audience to know that she's experiencing bloodlust. But the enhanced hearing, the being able to hear thoughts, those are all pretty standard vampire powers that we see in a lot of things. The shadow flying is still my absolute favorite thing. I just think that is so cool. And we get more powers as the movies progress, but I always thought the shadow flying was really, really cool. Like I said, we're going to do the ratings after we do number 5. That way we can group all of the vampires together in one universe. There's not any tropes that really happen in this one. I will say it's not a vampire trope specifically, but I love when they bring witches and vampires together. Just like I love the whole vampire werewolf rivalry. We don't see that in this world, but we see it in a lot of other vampire worlds. I always like that one. But when they bring witches and vampires together, I'm always a big, big, big fan of that. So like I said, I mean, all of these have different charm. I think it would be hard to decide if 2 or 3 was my favorite. I actually think this one might be my favorite in the series. I'll tell you more after we talk about 3 next week. But I love this one. I think this one's so, so, so good. If you haven't watched the movies yet, I do highly recommend you go watch them. You have time. You can watch one a week as we do each one of these. Like I said, they are free everywhere. And then make sure you ride this out because we're going to do next week 3. Then we'll do Vampire Journals with me and Tony. Then 4, then 5, and then quickly we'll talk about Decadent Evil 1 and 2. So please continue on this ride with me. And then once it's all done, go to my Instagram and see if I was able to finish my book because that is the master goal over the next 6 weeks. So I, of course, adore you guys. I love everybody who shows up to my channel. I especially love the people who comment. If you made it all the way to the end, please comment Mummy in the bottom, M-U-M-M-Y, which is what Radu calls his mother. I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. I'll see you next week. Good evening.
And big finish. Thank you.